Okay. Well, let's see. There he is. Bob Michaud, our traffic engineer, is here to discuss his suggestions for modifications of Warren Avenue as a result of his study of the traffic situation on Warren. Bob, we're trying to, gosh, we're already 45 minutes late. If we can, I think this will take longer than 15 minutes or so.
It shouldn't. Okay. So I'll keep my presentation to 5 minutes and then we'll go to questions.
That sounds good. The shutters look good, Mark, by the way.
Oh, good. Took a while to get them up there.
Yeah.
Protocol if you're planning on speaking. I'm not planning on speaking very much. Okay. Okay, good. Yep.
Yeah, right.
You can just pass it back, so I appreciate it.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they can pay.
Okay, thank you, board members. For the record, Robert Michaud, a principal with MDM Transportation Consultants based in Marlborough, Massachusetts. What I'd like to do is recap the outcome or findings of our study of Warren Avenue, and particularly its juncture with Gun Club Lane and the access way to what is known as the Ogilvy's property at 75 Warren Avenue. It's shown as a red dot on the serial map, and it's very hard to see what that means until you begin to look at a closer aerial mapping of the various properties that are located along Warren Avenue, which is in this orientation right here. Warren Lane is right here, feeds into a residential neighborhood. The various properties that are being redeveloped for apartment use on either side of Warren Avenue, just before Warren Avenue's terminus at Gun Club Lane here, which of course you know leads to the Jericho Town Forest. And is also proximate to an access road which crosses town property into the commercial property, which I'll refer to as the Ogilvy's property. Although there are a number of users of that property, I think it's fair to refer to it as the Ogilvy's property. The nature of our work really was to identify and try to solve, if you will, several objectives. We know that the Ogilvy's property has been proposed for a slightly increased or expanded commercial use for Pure Solutions, where they're going to be building a 7,500 square foot building, 5,000 square foot footprint with a 2,500 square foot mezzanine or office second floor. It would replace this portion of the site, which is today parked out with various vehicles. The employment levels at Pure Solutions would go from 6 to 9, not a large increase, but an increase nonetheless. So we needed to understand the effect of that increased commercial activity, the types of vehicles that are currently using that commercial activity, and the effect of those vehicles on what is essentially a residential or neighborhood type street, Warren Avenue. We also, as an objective, needed to understand how to accommodate various vehicle types from the municipal side, whether a school bus or a fire truck or a plow, given the terminal point or how Warren Avenue ends in that vicinity. It literally ends. And so if you're a school bus, if you're a fire engine, if you're a snow plow, there aren't a whole lot of options for you to reverse direction, as would be the case with a cul-de-sac or some other typical design element. We also know that the town is in the process of planning a sidewalk along the east portion of Warren Avenue, and that sidewalk would also provide enhanced pedestrian accessibility to the town forest. Though no specific pedestrian connection has been identified to the town forest, we wanted to try to integrate a design solution to Warren Avenue that would accommodate that as a future design consideration. And of course, we also understood that there were concerns from the neighborhood generally as to the amount of traffic, the speed of traffic, limited sight visibility to oncoming vehicles, and the presence and interaction between pedestrians and these various vehicle types. So it's a unique situation in some. We began with inventorying the existing travel speeds and volume characteristics of the road at Warren Avenue. What we've discovered is that while the prima facie or regulatory speed limit along that road is 30 miles an hour, the measured speeds, whether average or what we call 85th percentile, fall below that regulatory speed limit. So it's not common for people who do use Warren Avenue, whether as a commercial vehicle, a resident, or perhaps someone going to the town forest, to travel very fast at all. They're generally falling within the parameters of the legal speed limit and on average well below it. And it's probably an outcome of the width of the road, which varies from 20 to 22 feet, as well as the curved nature of the road. I think people use it generally with caution. From a volume perspective, we conducted automatic traffic recorder counts, ATR counts. They were done with a radar type device. And we did that on weekdays and weekends in the fall of last year. And what we've determined is that over the course of an entire weekday, that it averages about 300 to 325 vehicle trips per day along Warren Avenue, to include all vehicle types and activity. And when you look at the hour-by-hour variation in that 300 or so vehicle trips, you'll see that there's a spike in the morning at about 6 to 7 in the morning, principally associated with commercial activity at 75 Warren Avenue. And again, in the afternoon between 3 and 4 and 4 and 5, when many of the employees of the commercial entities, Weston Landscape, Pure Solutions, etc., are returning to that facility. So for those two particular periods of time, or hours, the number of vehicle trips is about one vehicle every couple of minutes. It's not an intense use necessarily, but it is a slightly higher level of activity when you compare it to other periods of the day where you only have between 15 and 20 vehicle trips being generated per hour. The weekend activity tends to be about 30% less on Saturday. So Saturday we have a more evenly distributed amount of traffic that peaks in the middle of the day at about 30 vehicle trips over the course of an hour. It's two-way traffic flow. Somewhat lower during the shoulder hours, but you'll see as a trend consistently between 10 and 15 vehicle trips per hour during many of the hours of the day. A lot of that is associated with recreational activity going to the town forest, for instance. And likewise on a Sunday, we have about half as much daily traffic as we see during a weekday, almost all of which is associated with residential or recreational pursuits. And you'll see that in the middle of the day, the highest traffic generation is about 19 total vehicle trips. So it's not a very high number at all, about half what you'd see during a weekday. So given those trends, we also had the benefit of looking at the proposed plans for the residential, the apartment development on either side of Warren Avenue. And there was an attempt during that design process to address a fundamental issue of safety for emergency apparatus and likewise some consideration perhaps for school buses. And in the design process for those apartments, there was a concept of widening out portions of the road to facilitate what I call a T-type reverse direction of a fire truck. It's not an ideal situation, and in our modeling of that, it became apparent that it would be rather cumbersome for an emergency vehicle to conduct that type of maneuver, never mind a school bus or some other kind of commercial vehicle. So where I started in the conversation of trying to solve many things, we've developed a conceptual improvement plan. And, it attempts to do many things, which I'll explain in a moment. Before I flip this to the other side, I want the board and the public to understand that in developing a concept plan, we're not intending to create a situation where we want this to look or feel or perform like a highway or anything like that. What we've done is we've identified a series of measures that could be implemented to A, facilitate the movement of school buses, B, facilitate the movement of other municipal vehicles like snow plows and fire trucks, and to likewise meter or soften the experience, if you will, that a resident would experience from vehicle travel along that portion of Warren Avenue by commercial vehicles. And that has to do with the posting of various signs and markings. So this is the concept plan that we've developed that attempts to achieve all of those objectives. So you'll see that the Warren Avenue corridor essentially terminates here where it meets the access route to the Ogilvy property, and here's the Gun Club Lane connection. Various apartment uses here. One of the things that's shown here is the future for a sidewalk on the east side of Warren Avenue. That's in the planning stages by the town. And you'll also see on this plan that we've attempted to provide better delineation of where you should be as a vehicle on Warren Avenue. It is marked currently. There's a single yellow line in the middle of the road. It's not necessarily in the middle of the road. It's sometimes 2/3 to one side rather than the other, but there is a yellow line near the center of the road. Additional markings could be placed along at least this portion of Warren Avenue that would provide a better sense of delineation of the travel lane, by introducing either a single or double yellow center line and edge lines that better define the roadway edges, offset by about 1 foot from where the paved surface actually ends. So the effective width of the lane would be 10 feet, and that's what you'd see visually as a vehicle, and at that width, that would tend to encourage slower speeds. You'll also see that along portions of Warren Avenue, shown here schematically, there are some curves that limit your visibility to an oncoming vehicle. And it's not uncommon, for instance, at the curve just south of Warren Lane, to travel as a vehicle in the middle of the road rather than in your lane. Right? And anyone who's out here on a regular basis will see that as a regular trend. So the idea here is, in combination with better marking of the center line of the road to delineate where you should be, to post advisory signs that would reinforce a slower travel speed. So while the regulatory speed is 30 miles an hour, and we know the actual measured speeds are below that number, reinforcing speeds prior to that curve section in particular at 25 miles an hour would be an appropriate traffic control measure. It would provide a better sense to folks who are not familiar with the area that A, there's a curve ahead, and B, that they shouldn't be exceeding 25 miles an hour. So that's what those signs mean. As you approach the accessway in the Ogilvy's, we've shown the same type of signing. That would only be in one direction. It would be traveling north toward the Ogilvy's property, and it would have a posted advisory speed of 15 miles an hour. It would delineate the difference, if you will, between the accessway to Ogilvy's and the Gun Club Lane with a specific sign type. All intended to advise people who are in automobiles or commercial vehicles that this is an area where you really shouldn't be traveling fast. Also shown in here, and it's the most significant feature of the plan, is the introduction of a loop to this area, and that loop would provide the ability for a school bus to access and reverse direction via Gun Club Lane back to the south. That is not feasible today. This plan would not only allow for that movement by school buses, it would also allow emergency apparatus like a tower truck, a pumper truck, a snowplow truck, or a municipal vehicle to reverse direction in a convenient way. The effect or impact of that particular, what is shown as a red cobble type design is to essentially pave along a portion of that 15-foot wide access way leading to Ogilvy's, to stripe the existing access way with a single white edge line here that delineates that access way and separates it from this other paved area, and would require the removal of 2 trees, mature trees, an adjustment to the planned retaining wall structure for the apartment use, and some limited clearing. There is not any kind of significant tree or canopy structure in this zone, but there would be some regrading and some removal of vegetation to achieve that portion of the design. So it has limited impact, but it does have impact to mature trees too in this case, and an adjustment to what is being planned on the residential property next door to it. You will also see on this plan that we've shown the continuation of the planned town sidewalk to run alongside that loop to provide a crossing of the access way and a connection to some kind of path that would lead eventually to the town forest. And so this is, if you will, a master plan or a longer-term plan that envisions that over time those types of design elements could be introduced depending on funds and permitting that are done separately from this exercise. And finally, we would also indicate that there are a number of signs that would provide regulatory restrictions on who could use this loop. This is not intended to be a public loop. It is intended to be strictly school bus, commercial vehicle, and municipal vehicle use. So we believe that what we've achieved here are a number of objectives. We've introduced the idea of better delineation of travel areas. We've provided the ability to, in a master plan kind of way, provide a connection to the town forest with specific pedestrian traffic controls and crossings to facilitate that, and appropriate signs to reinforce lower travel speeds. And again, where I started with this is not intended to represent a whole series of improvements that you could do and make this look like a highway. That's not the intention. It may be that a single yellow stripe, which is there today, gets reintroduced in the center of the road, perhaps with thermoplastic reflective markings so they're more visible at night. You may or may not want to do the edge line markings. You think it's appropriate, but some people may think that starts feeling like a highway, so maybe you don't do that. And perhaps even the advisory signs are not necessarily something that needs to be done based on the actual measured performance of the road. So these don't all have to be embraced as having to be done, but they're shown on this plan nonetheless.
You've got stop, yield, and no entry signs down at the bottom. Where would you post those?
Those would actually be placed, well, if you look at the, and I know it may be difficult to see from there, but the loop, most of those are associated with the loop. So upon your entry to the loop, there'll be a proposed sign, municipal vehicles only, and that's that red sign right there. And that has to be read. It has to be very clear to somebody that they shouldn't be there unless they're a school bus or a fire truck. The R51s are the do not enter signs. So to the extent someone is going to the town forest and they're traveling along this edge and they see this opening, those would reinforce that you're not supposed to use that opening. And because they'll be set back from the road and not visible from Warren Avenue, the only folks who would see those signs would be those people on Gun Club Lane who are going to the town forest or who live further down Gun Club Lane. Those are a safety feature. We just don't want people saying, oh, let's park here and walk to the town forest. You're supposed to stay out. And then the stop signs, we've actually indicated at 2 locations, 3 locations, one on the loop, right? And then one new one at the end of Gun Club Lane. We want people to stop before they come on to Warren Avenue in the event that there's a commercial vehicle coming, for instance. And likewise, and there's one posted today on a tree, a stop sign on the access road from Ogilvy. So we'd like to update that to a typical standard, a bit larger than what currently exists, and is properly posted at a proper height on a proper sign base. So that's where those signs are all coming from, and they're shown in the legend.
Is there a yield sign anywhere?
Yield, yeah, RT1. That would actually be, that's actually posted on the merge point in the loop before you get to Gun Club Lane. And again, this is conceptual. It's based on the available mapping we had at the time. It's supplemented by our own field measurements, and I think it presents a concept that would have to be further engineered.
The cobble pavement, you're not proposing to be red, are you?
No, it's only, that's for visibility.
I mean, it's just a graphic device.
It's a graphic device to indicate that there is going to be a difference, if you will, between the paved area that represents the loop and the paved area that currently comprises the access way. My sense would be that that would either be some form of textured pavement, and it could be black, or it could be green, but it should be something that's distinguishable from the access road itself, and would be further distinguished from the access road by the use of a single white edge line, so that the 15-foot right-of-way, the easement area that exists over town property, is clearly delineated, and we don't want trucks to necessarily be driving on this all the time. We want them to be on the access way. This red area has the secondary benefit of allowing vehicles to pass one another to the extent it's needed. So in the event, for instance, a vehicle were accessing Ogilvy's property at the same time one had already entered into the access way, there would be the ability for this vehicle to pull aside if necessary to allow that vehicle to travel on. You can't do that today. That access way is as narrow as 10 feet. And so if you're a landscaping truck, you got to play chicken with another vehicle, or at least perceive that you should stop before you access here and let the other vehicle pass. So this has an added or secondary benefit, and we do actually show one other stop bar in advance of the loop that would allow a commercial vehicle to stop before they proceeded to determine whether or not a school bus, for instance, was coming. And if one was, they'd just stop in that position and allow that vehicle to proceed before they move. So it's been thought out from the perspective of providing sufficient signs to advise on how to use this loop. I suspect that the commercial users, hopefully without incident, are able to use the existing access way fairly efficiently. I think that is the case, even though it's only about 10 feet wide effectively. But this would reinforce and make it a little bit safer and provide some flexibility in how vehicles travel along that edge. So with that, any questions?
Well, questions from the board?
We've seen this, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions?
I just have a question. How hard is it for you to put together an animation of this, like someone driving through the series in a car?
An animation, like an actual...
animation.
We could do that. We could do...
I'm not asking to do it. I'm just asking how hard it is to do.
Well, there's two ways to do that, really. There's a static method of doing that, and then there's a dynamic or modeling way to do that. These are the static models that would indicate if you're a school bus, shown here, what the path of that school bus would be and how it would traverse that loop. And we do that using computer software, AutoCAD software, and vehicle dimensions, axle dimensions, vehicle width, steering angles, to make sure that what we're showing geometrically actually works, that we're not going to have a situation where you're climbing over curbs or your wheels are in the mud. So those static means we've already done, and they're presented in our study. We've done the same exercise for a fire truck, for instance, which is a larger vehicle, to ensure that that opening is sufficiently wide and that the swept area is sufficiently wide on Gun Club Lane without having to widen Gun Club Lane. Right, so we're not proposing to do anything on Gun Club Lane other than a slight, if you will, chamfering of the road, a slight expansion of the road on that edge to meet the loop.
And there's a wooded island in there it's hard to see, right?
Yes, this entire area right
Teardrop
here
shape.
is actually, that teardrop shape is actually all wooded. And we're not proposing to remove any, what I'd call substantial trees or vegetation from that area. If you look at, and it's hard to tell because there's so many trees in this, but Gun Club Lane is just under what we're showing to be the label, right? And it's hidden a little bit by the tree canopy, but this area right here is what we're calling the teardrop, right? And we're not proposing to remove any of the mature trees that you see at the juncture where the access road is in Gun Club Lane. There's a very large mature pine tree, for instance, and there's a few others behind it. The widening, the loop itself would be cut into the portion of the wooded area where it's principally either saplings or less than mature trees. The only mature trees that are shown on the survey are showing up, you know, here, 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 and a few back there.
And those all stay?
Those all stay.
So where are the two that mature
The
trees
two-
that come down?
The two mature trees are immediately adjacent to the access way on the apartment building side of the access way. They're hard to see, but if you look closer under the red, you'll see that there are two trees there. There's a third behind it that could be retained. So those are the only two that would need to be removed. Other than that, it's fairly inconsequential clearing.
Has this been staked or have those trees been?
We have not staked it, although in the presentation of the same material in December of last year, there was the concept of going out with some stakes and actually marking so that people could get a better sense as to what would be removed and what wouldn't, and what this would look like. And that's certainly an exercise that we could do if the board deemed it
I think we
appropriate.
got it, we have to do it.
Okay.
I mean, we talked about it last December, and then we got buried in 8 feet of snow.
Yes. good.
But what we all agreed to was that in order to visualize this, for people to visualize it, you can't, you know, most people can't see what this is going to look like
Right.
from a diagram like this. They've got to see it out on the ground, laid out, so they can understand what the real world consequences are.
Right. And hence the comment, I suspect, on simulation.
Visualization,
Right, yep,
Yeah.
it's a great comment.
Yeah.
And we've done that. We did that for Russell's Garden Centers before those improvements were made, where the signal now exists. We needed to mark out the confines of the reconfigured parking area. We did that with spray cans and stakes and everything else. And we could certainly do a similar exercise here.
Right. Anybody from the audience? Yes.
Isabella Jancourt, 56 Gun Club Lane. Hi, Bob.
Hi.
So I'm trying to, as Al said, visualize what's happening here. Now, did you say there's not going to be any widening of Gun Club Lane itself?
That's correct. There are
Okay.
wetland constraints that limit
Yeah,
your
big
ability to
time.
do
Yeah.
that, yeah. So we don't want to touch that.
Okay.
Any of the it's not even a widening, there's a separation between where we're showing the edge of this portion of the loop
Yeah.
and the edge of Gun Club Lane.
Yeah.
It's probably as much as maybe 8 feet offset from where the
So
front
first of all,
edge.
the 3 mailboxes are not going to be impacted at all.
No.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out where that red area is. Can you like relate the railroad tracks to that?
The lower tracks are
Railroad tracks.
further away, but I'll show you better on an aerial.
Oh, okay.
So this is at a larger scale, or a smaller
Yeah.
scale, I should say.
Uh-huh.
This is the rail bed right here.
Okay.
Ogilvy's property. The teardrop that we're talking about is actually right here. So
Uh-huh.
we're very far from where the rail bed is.
Okay.
If you were at the intersection of where Ogilvy's driveway is and Gun Club Lane,
Yeah.
the teardrop would extend back from that point, which is right here, something like 60, 120, 150 feet from that large pine tree. That would be
Yeah.
the back of the loop.
Okay.
Right.
Could I just ask, Wally, is that where your old chicken coop used to be, what they're talking about here?
I think it's a little, yeah, it's the
Yeah.
very edge of it.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
your coop might actually be
Right.
further toward the Ogilvy property.
It would
I've
be-
seen something disturbed there.
Closer to the teardrop, I think.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, I think I get the picture, thank you.
So we need a site.
Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah, Kevin?
Question, yeah. Kevin Whittemore, representing Overlease. Bob, would that exit part of that teardrop be one way?
Yes, that is a one-way loop. Its sole and exclusive function is to take a vehicle that's heading north and allow them to go south. That's it. And that's why we've got the signs there, so if someone's going down Gun Club Lane, they don't mistake it for something that it's not.
Right. I'd be a little concerned if it would maybe introduce more people to our backyard.
Yeah. And my opinion is that it would not, because as you visualize the access road today, it wouldn't look much different than it does today. What is now grassed area adjacent to your driveway would be paved with something, probably a textured surface.
Where those trees are.
Exactly, but you wouldn't really even see the backside of this loop. You'd see trees and canopy and everything else, but this would not look like a road. This would look like a driveway, and the sign that says private, do not enter, that stays. You know, we're not proposing to eliminate that.
Anyone else? In that case, let's schedule a site walk. We can stake it out, give people a chance to see exactly in the real world what the consequences are. And it might be helpful if you had photographic examples of what you mean by the different pavement.
Oh, sure, yeah, we can do that.
So that people, you know, because it's hard, I think, for people to picture that, you know, I'm sure that people are trying to think of what that might look like.
Yeah.
But if you had a picture of it, that would be helpful.
Okay. All right, great. Well, I'll coordinate with Betsy.
Okay.
Great.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
Thank
Yes,
you.
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
When the sidewalks, since you're staking out everything, would it be possible to also place some sort of, what the signs would be, where they would be placed? If that's possible, because it seems like a lot of signage going on
You
back
can put
there.
some markers up.
We can actually print a scaled stop sign, for instance, and we could post it on a stake.
Okay.
We could do that.
All right.
Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea, because what we don't want to do is create a situation where this looks or feels like a highway. We're respectful.
Too many
of-
signs, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We've heard that loud and clear. So we may be able to eliminate certain signs given the context of what this
I mean,
is.
if people are going 15 miles an hour,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
maybe
We're not speeding.
maybe they don't need 3 stop signs to get from Ogilvy's to
Yes, I did.
the
Gotcha.
Warren.
Yeah.
Um,
No.
Good. Any other comments or questions?
Just a question. Where were the sensors placed when you took the traffic study?
Yeah. So we use two types of technology. One type is a video camera setup. It's on an extendable pole. It goes up 20 feet in the air. And we actually set that up. It was attached to that utility pole. And it was pointed in this direction. And so we have video coverage of what the vehicle movements look like and what the volume of those movements is. Right? So that was one location using video-based technology. The other was radar recorder, which was placed just south of Warren Lane in this vicinity, and it was intended to pick up the portion of Warren Lane that had the potentially highest travel speeds, because there's a straightaway, if you will, between where the curve section is and where your driveway is. And it's essentially at the midpoint of that section, so that's why we placed it there. And of course, that radar recorder also picked up any of the vehicular activity associated with folks who live on Warren Lane, in addition to the commercial use.
Good. Good, thank you.
Thank
Bob.
you.
So we'll let everyone know when the sidewalk is.
Great,
Good, thank you.
thank you. See, right, please.